You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Incoming transmission.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
Highly caffeinated, typically vindicated, often imitated, and never duplicated. This is the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm your host, Matt Holloway, and the new conservative resistance begins right here, right now, with you.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Good evening, everybody. That's right. The new conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now, with you. You are listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. It is Sunday, August the 12th, in the year of our Lord 2018. And today, oh man, I woke up today, and I'm telling you, there is nothing that compares, I have to stop myself before I break into song, to Arizona heat plus humidity. Arizona heat plus humidity. Today, the temperatures hit well up over 100 degrees, but because of the monsoon storms, our beautiful monsoon storms, which make me want to, run outside, look at the sky, and just shout,
all of you!
Yeah, it's like 48% humidity, 50% humidity, and I know I hear the people back east and on the Pacific Coast crying, wah, 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 but my God, when you're dealing with over 100 degrees and humidity that high, you just can't get cool. I mean, there's a certain point where, I gotta be careful here because I'm on radio, but there's a certain point you can't take off any more clothes. There's a certain point where you can't do anything to get the yuck off of you. But I digress. Anyway, today is an auspicious occasion where, conservatives and libertarians the country over just kind of look down and shake their heads because the idiots that make the rest of us look bad are at it again. That's right. The white nationalists out on the East Coast today hosted the Unite the Right 2 rally, and even Fox News has got nothing good to say about this one. There is no redeeming value to this organization whatsoever. This Unite the Right march has triggered tension, Antifa clashes, and hundreds of counter-protests, according to Samuel Chamberlain at Fox News. And apparently, the 100 to 400 people who were expected to attend was far fewer in number. Really what this was an opportunity for the left, for your Antifa, for your socialists, to get together and say we're better than everybody else. Because, let's put it this way, these are white supremacists. And I'm sitting here with my hands up going, yeah, I might give Antifa and the socialists that one. I still think they're better than white nationalists. Because I have absolutely nothing but disdain in my heart and on my tongue for anybody who is a racial nationalist. And that cuts across all cloths. That goes to white nationalists. That goes to black nationalists. Because, yeah, that's a thing, by the way. Look it up. Black Panthers are a black nationalist organization, just for the record. But any organization that is nationalist and says, we want this chunk of land for this color, as far as I'm concerned, you're friggin' idiots. This chunk of land for this melanin count, this pigmentation. As far as melanin count is concerned, it might as well be flippin' midichlorians from Star Wars, because it is that much of a fictional gosh damn difference, okay? Nationalism has got absolutely all to do with the color of your skin. I'm going to repeat that for the people taking notes. Nationalism has got nothing to do with the color of your skin. What nationalism has to do with the content of your character, the product of your soul, the sweat of your brow, the philosophy of your mind, the beliefs of your heart. Are you American? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, you are my countryman. If the answer is no, you are not my countryman. That doesn't mean you're not a human being. That doesn't mean I don't like you. That just means we're not countrymen. We're not from the same country. Therefore, from a nationalistic perspective, I am not obligated to treat with you in the same fashion that I would my countryman, my neighbor, my friend. Can you have friends from different countries? Of course, but it's different when you're countrymen. Okay? This is not a new concept. And what we are seeing today is this irrational conflation of nationalism with racism. And I will say it now, I will say it clearly, and I will continue to say it. Nationalism is not racism. It is not racism. It is not racist to believe that the United States of America should be for Americans. It is not racist to believe that Europe should be Europeans or China should be for Chinese people. Why is that? Because nationality has got nothing to do with what your skin color is. Are there countries that are more homogenous than others? Like, for example, the aforementioned China, Japan, Malaysia, places where people are largely homogenous in nature. Prior to about 20 years ago, one could say this about Sweden, Finland, Denmark. People there were largely white. Extremely white, in fact. Don't go in the sun kind of white. Sunburn may kill you kind of white. But nationalism in Namibia or in Kenya, is that necessarily black nationalism? No, that's Kenyan or Namibian nationalism. Russian nationalism. Does that have to do with what religion you are? No. Where this gets sideways is when we talk about nations and states where the faith is intermingled part and parcel with the country. The United States is not, nor has it ever been, one of those states. The United States is not, nor has it ever been, nor will it ever become, a theocracy. It is, however, irrevocably a nation founded on the philosophical concepts of the Judeo-Christian Western value system. However, there is no Church of the United States. We look at countries like Iran. We look at countries like Saudi Arabia. These are theocratic religious states. Despite Saudi Arabia ostensibly being a secular government, I don't believe that for 2 seconds, but I digress. In those states, nationalism and religion are intermingled. But the only state in the world right now where race is solidified with the nationalism, the only functional government where this is true, is in North Korea. Absolutely accurate. So why all this bashing of nationalism? Because all you see today, nationalists, talking about Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is seeing a revival of nationalism. People are saying, from Italy to Hungary, the Trumps of Europe are rising to power. This comes from In These Times. Across the European Union and the United States, the far right is stroking ethno-nationalist sentiments and ginning up hatred of immigrants. I want to clarify, ethno-nationalist sentiments? That is 100% high-grade bull. That is bollocks that the right is stoking ethno-nationalist sentiments. Because Americans specifically come in every color of the gosh dang rainbow. The day they come out with purple and green human beings, we will have them. Because that is the fabric of our nation. We are a nation of immigrants, of legal immigrants. It is a nationalist argument to have a stout immigration system that requires legal immigrants. Okay? This is not an ethno-nationalist sentiment, as the author and In These Times, Mr. Joel Blyfus, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, tries to contend. But he goes on. On June 8th, Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, who we've mentioned before, shut down 7 mosques. On June 13, he called for a creation of the ominously titled Axis of the Willing to stop, quote, illegal immigration. By the way, illegal immigration shouldn't be in quotes. That's a thing that exists. Unlike hate speech, which we'll get into later. The name is a play on the term Axis powers and the George W. Bush's Coalition of the Willing. I think it's a rather unfortunate play on words, perhaps a little too tongue-in-cheek for us Westerners to get. The 31-year-old People's Party's leader's invitation was accepted by German Interior Minister Horst Seehofer, head of the right-wing Bavarian Christian Social Unity Party, and the Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini, leader of the far-right league, which June 1st formed a government with the anti-immigration Five Star Movement. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban also welcomed the creation of the Axis. Under his leadership, Hungary has teamed up with right-wing governments in Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, the so-called Visegrad Group, to oppose immigrant quotas for EU member states. As Orban explained in a 2017 speech, if we want a Hungarian Hungary and a European Europe, and that is exactly what we want, then we must also want a Christian Hungary and a Christian Europe instead of what now threatens us, a Europe with a mixed population and no sense of identity. See here, this is what I was mentioning earlier, where religion and the state are intermingled. Europe has done this in spades, so has the Middle East for over 2,000 years. So in a situation like this, you will see people glomming on to their Christianity as an expression of nationalism. So that is religio-nationalism. That is not ethno-nationalism, because Muslim is not an identity for an ethnic state. Muslim is not an ethnicity. It is a religion. It is also a philosophy. So if your philosophy is interbred with your concept of politics and governance, as in most Islamic states as required by the Quran, versus states that have traditionally interwoven Christian values and Christian hierarchies and relationships into their state, such as Hungary, Czech Republic and Slovakia. Apparently I had an old globe in college. And the other members of the Visegrad Group have historically been Christian holdouts. They were states that were constantly under threat of invasion by the Ottoman Turks throughout the early thousands. So 1100, 1200, 1300, Middle Ages, Vlad the Impaler. Folks, this is the kind of crap that they're used to in Eastern Europe. This is why we are seeing a rise of nationalism in Eastern Europe. Because there are two threats to nationalism in Eastern Europe, to their national identity that this group of countries has weathered in the last 1,000 years. One, they fought off invasion from the Ottoman Turks and the Caliphate longer than anybody else, and more successfully than anybody else as well, I might add. The Carpathians held out forever. Okay? So these are some tough folks. And actually, it's 3 times. Number 2, Nazism tried to crush nationalism in these nations. Tried to put them under the jackboot and the heel of Germany. And 3, communism tried to erase these countries from the map, but they have persisted today through the power of their own national identity because their patriotism just won't die. So these countries need to be the canary in the coal mine. They are getting up in arms because they see the threats where they are. They see the threat of an increasingly socialist EU, and they see the threat of losing their national identities because people are flooding into their country with their national and religious identities fused together. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, We're going to go into a little bit more detail about the goings-on in Eastern Europe, and we're going to touch briefly on the Unite the Right To rally taking place now in Washington, D.C. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm your host, Matt Holloway from Phoenix, Arizona. If you'd like to follow us along, we're on Facebook Live at facebook.com/HoloNet. Tweet us at the HoloNet. Find us on theholonet.lanterns.buzz and theholonet.com.
I see people coming together not for divisiveness of party or for dichotomy of thought, but for unity in principle. In the principles that founded our nation, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, ladies and gentlemen, those principles are under the sternest attack that we have seen in many generations. It has become a crime in this nation nearly to express a difference in opinion from what is held by your party to be doctrine, from what is purported by the media to be truth. We have an opportunity to reach out to our fellow Americans regardless of their creed and regardless of their political inclinations, and unite as Americans, not as Republicans or as Democrats, as liberals or conservatives, but to unite around the principles that have guided this nation so well. I've covered a lot of stories, but the story that remains untold is the story of America in the 21st century, when we choose to turn back the tide against progressive socialism, when we choose to embrace the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, when we remember what it is to be Americans. And that principle will not die as long as there's one man, one woman, one child who looks defiantly into the night and says, I am free.
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. And coming back from the break, looking on Twitter, we have Tyler, old listener and friend of the show, saying, Laura Ingraham's spiel this week inherently disproves your sentiment that ethno-nationalism in the U.S. isn't a thing. She expressly stated that we're losing America due to demographic shifts, and there are absolutely groups who latch onto this. Tyler, you're absolutely right. Hell, there are groups marching in Washington, D.C., all couple 20 of them, that absolutely latch on to this concept of ethno-nationalism with the United States. The point that I'm trying to make, good buddy, is that nationalism is not racism. Ethno-nationalism is a separate and thoroughly disproven concept. It is an invalid conceit. I do not give that ground. I do not recognize it as a legitimate mindset or a legitimate position. I don't give that legitimacy, and you shouldn't either, buddy. So, you are absolutely correct. Laura Ingram's spiel does prove that that exists. But I do want to point out that when we talk about a demographic shift, in this country, we really need to discuss, are we dealing with legal immigration? Or are we dealing with illegal immigration? Because at the end of the day, it makes a hell of a difference. It goes to the intent of the person who is coming into the United States. And we do have to argue intent here, because intent is critical, as is context. Context is for kings, after all. So when we look at people who are coming into the United States, are they coming into the United States with the intention of joining the American culture and improving it and becoming part of the melting pot, or are we talking about becoming part of the salad? Because a salad, you have things that are mixed together but are still inherently themselves. When you have a melting pot, everything gets blended together and adds to the greater whole. And this is an old concept. If we look back to Teddy Roosevelt, a progressive, I feel dirty even mentioning, he had the concept that there should be no hyphenated Americans. There should be only Americans. You shouldn't be an Italian American, you shouldn't be an Irish American, you should just be an American. And we have gone very much the other way, where you have enclaves within our country that are maintaining their cultural individuality and contributing to the overall greater cloth of the American nation, and I agree with that. There are two ways to go about it, though. You can create cultural enclaves, which are single language, where you have not adopted the language and the culture of the parent country, such as in France, where there are areas where all of the billboards and signage, for example, are in Arabic. Or you can talk about Chinatowns, which prop up in cities all over the country and have over the last 100 years, where the signage is in Mandarin. Is the signage in Mandarin and English? Talk about South Phoenix. Is the signage in English and Spanish? If it is in English and Spanish, I would say that's probably a step in the right direction. If the signage is predominantly just in Spanish, because we're talking about a cultural enclave, which is not at all blending with the greater overall culture of the parent nation, I think we have an issue. So, when we talk about ethno-nationalism is an invalid concept. When we talk about demographic shifts that are coming in and the need to control demographic shifts, that is a function of regulating immigration. We've regulated immigration for the entire history of this country. And illegal immigration is an issue. It is a problem when we have people who are coming into the country who may or may not be expressing a willingness to actually become American citizens. Becoming an American citizen is a great personal dedication. It is a great effort, it is a great expense, and it shows an extreme desire to become an American citizen. So I would be open to question, do we have people who want to become American citizens to be American citizens? Or do we have people coming into this country who want to be Mexicans in America? Do you want to become an American of Mexican descent, or do you want to become a Mexican in America? And I think that's the important question that we need to ask that is getting missed with Laura Ingraham's spiel. And I think that is the only valid positioning of the demographic split, of people becoming alarmed at the demographics. I think that is the only valid argument when you become alarmed at the demographics and the change in our culture that Laura Ingraham seems to espouse. Now, I'm not going to try to explain away what she said, because that's not my job. I don't work for Laura Ingraham. I don't even listen to her or watch her, really. But that is the only valid question I can pick up out of that. Is, are these people contributing to our culture in a way that enhances it? Or are they creating insular, enclaves of their own culture within America. Because America has traditionally benefited from the introduction of immigrant cultures into our nation. I grew up back east. I grew up back east in Jersey, where you can get basically any kind of ethnic food you could possibly dream of. I mean, you can get Indian food, you can get like Ethiopian food, anything. And I realize I'm bringing it back to food. What do you want? I'm a fat guy. This is the way I think. And this is the way that a lot of people are first introduced into the greater whole of the American populace. My hometown, Carteret, New Jersey, 4.5 square miles, population 27,000. One supermarket, by the way, had an annual festival. I think it still goes on right now. I'm going to have to reach out to Mayor Dan Ryman and see if it's still going on, called Ethnic Day. And I looked forward to it every single year. Why did I look forward to it every single year? Because I could go to the Jamaican booth because we had Caribbean people who lived in our town, and I could get Jamaican beef patties. I could go to the Ukrainian booth, and I could get Ukrainian food. I can't think of one off the top of my head. I could go to the Polish booth because I was related to a lot of Polacks, and cabbage and noodles and pierogies. As far as the eye can see, cabbage and noodles, cabbage rolls. I like Polish food. That's kind of what I grew up with. You can go to the Italian table, you get Italian food. Every different type of nationality, you could go to a booth and get some of the food. It was a way for the town to celebrate the different ethnicities that had come to live in Carteret and had contributed to that melting pot. I went to a very big high school. And a very diverse high school. We had a lot of black students, a lot of different South American, Central American, Caribbean. I'm not going to say Hispanic because people lump that up. These are different cultures, man. But whole bunch of different cultures. Eastern European, Slavic people, Spaniards, Africans from Africa. And I loved the fact that I was steeped in all of these different ethnicities and all these different cultures, but they all shared the same thing. They wanted to be American. They didn't want to have this insular little 5-block radius where it was just people that looked like them, talked like them, acted like them. And I don't think that's a healthy model. I do believe in the propagation and enhancement of the American culture through the introduction of positive aspects of other societies. That's critical to what we are as a nation, and it is the meaning of America. But the demographic alarm, that only applies when people come into your country with no intention of becoming your countrymen. I mentioned earlier the difference between who is your countryman and who is not your countryman. My countryman is someone who came to America to be an American, not to be of their national identity in America. So I hope I've clarified that for my good buddy Tyler. And man, I just blew a whole segment on responding to Laura Ingraham shooting off at the mouth. I don't even watch her damn show. What kind of crap is that, man? I need a producer to keep me on task. I really do. Now hiring, for absolutely no freaking money, because I'm broke, a producer for the HoloNet podcast. People, hit me up on Facebook, Twitter. We're live, holonet.com, facebook.com/holonet, tweet at the HoloNet. I love getting these live tweets during the show. It doesn't happen to me often, and it makes me feel special. So thank you so much, Tyler, for hitting me up on that, brother. Hope you're enjoying the show. Anybody else? I'm going to take a look at the Facebook Live right now. Oh, I got AJ Davis, Common Sense Radio, my Lanterneer brother. He is right now listening to the HoloNet Live. AJ, hope you're doing well in the People's Republic of Oregon, also known as Oregano. I don't know why I just made that into an Italian spice, but it was funny. It was funny, at least to me, and if you don't like my jokes, it's my show. It's not going to get any better from here. So, coming back to the obvious stuff that we actually have to look at this whole... I am not going to get to all these tabs before the show's over. I'm not going to get through all this crap. Trending on Twitter right now, if it ever loads, Unite the Right is still trending second from the top. Sunday Funday... Queers break Twitter, that's nice. Nazis trending on Twitter right now. Nazis trending number 7 on Twitter. Isn't that fun? Oh, goodness. We're going to talk a little bit more about that because we need to discuss foreign policy where the Nationalist International, apparently that's what Steve Bannon was trying to call it. I highlight this, I think 2 weeks ago when I talked about him trying to court UKIP. The Nationalist Internationale is crumbling. Steve Bannon is trying to sell Trumpism to Eastern Europeans, but shared ideologies die hard when they run into economic and military realities. This is on foreignpolicy.com, and it's kind of funny. But when you try to go bash China and bash Iran to countries who depend on trade from China in Iran, that's kind of the crap that happens. So, yeah, great big false alarm about Bannon trying to court UKIP and other nations in the European Union. They have their own nationalist movements, and they don't really care much about ours. All right, we're going to take a real quick break here at the half. When we come back, we're going to dig a little bit further down the rabbit hole into Europe, and we're also going to talk about hate speech. Hate speech does not exist. It is not a thing. Stop trying to make it a thing. It's never going to be a thing. All that and more here on the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm your host, Matt Holloway, and we have a excellent show for you here for the rest of the half hour. We're experiencing some slight technical difficulties, so I will ask your patience and apologize for that trouble. What in the world? Seems we're losing the live stream here, and all heck is breaking loose here at HoloNet Studios in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. So again, folks, I am going to apologize for the slight interruption here and the slight loss of audio quality, but the show must go on, as they say, and thus we shall. So, taking a look at Steve Bannon's current situation, the Nationalist International is crumbling, and that mainly has to do with people having a little bit of an issue with their primary trade partners being targeted by American policy. Now, this story here on the foreign policy goes to Bannon's messaging, echoing much of the rhetoric in the region that's becoming a beacon for the radical right, xenophobic resistance to immigration, ooh, big word, and what it considers the European Union's cultural Marxism, despite the fact that the European Union is ostensibly culturally Marxist. Yeah, figure that one, folks. So, Steve Bannon's plan is falling apart. I think most of us were a little bit ready for that to begin with. However, one thing certainly bears a bit of consideration. These nations in Europe, they have a whole different set of rules to play by. So most of them have a much harder time capitalizing on their own national identity because of hate speech. Hate speech does not exist. Hate speech is not a thing. It's never going to be a thing. Simply because hate speech is not singled out under the Constitution of the United States. Hate speech is not pointed to in any way, shape, or form in our founding documents as being more problematic or more of an offense or a source of illegality. Indeed, there is no hate speech. We go to the Federalist. Sorry, college kids, there's no such thing as hate speech. Great editorial by John Daniel Davidson. This is from April 20th, 2017. For the sake of campus protesters and their professors across the country, it's time to make something clear. There's no such thing as hate speech. Should go without saying, since freedom of speech and free inquiry is supposed to be what college is all about, but recent spate of violent protests from the University of California at Berkeley to Middlebury College in Vermont have been met with a collective shrug from an alarming number of college students, professors, and administrators who seem to be under the impression that violence is okay as long as its purpose is to silence hate speech. A lot of people forget that free speech is the critical tool of inquiry in this nation. Without free speech, without the ability to utter things which may be offensive to other people, a representative Republican government cannot work. And it was reassuring to me to even look to the LA Times in June 8th of 2017. Actually, hate speech is protected. Nice picture of Milo Yiannopoulos on there. Look at his smiling face. Free speech has its limitations are on Americans' minds. Here's the thing. Free speech does not have a logical limitation. The Supreme Court set forth that you cannot use fighting words. You cannot engage in dangerous speech, which is like screaming fire in the middle of a crowded room. You know, you can't do that. But in all other respects, there is no limitation to freedom of speech. So, folks, you have to remember, you have to take it to account that there is no freedom of speech limitation. And that the freedom of the speech which offends us is the speech that we must defend the most strenuously. We have to defend speech which we deem to be offensive. So when you see these people out and about right now who are protesting, who are Antifa, we have to go back to the concept, the core concept of I hate what you're saying, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. If we lose that, we lose the very definition of what it is to be American. We're coming back online on Facebook Live. I want to apologize to the people watching and listening there. We experienced a bit of a technical difficulty, and we are currently reviewing hate speech and the lie therein. We go to the Washington Post, The Volokh Conspiracy by Eugene Volokh. No, there's no hate speech exception to the First Amendment. May 7th, this is all the way back in 2015. He says, I keep hearing about a supposed hate speech exception to the First Amendment, or statements such as, this isn't free speech, it's hate speech, or when does free speech stop and hate speech begin? But there is no hate speech exception to the First Amendment. Hateful ideas, whatever exactly that might mean, are just as protected under the First Amendment as other ideas. One is as free to condemn Islam, or Muslims, or Jews, or blacks, or whites, or illegal aliens, or native-born citizens, as one is to condemn capitalism, or socialism, or Democrats, or Republicans. Boom! Laid out, full stop. I am a free speech absolutist. There is no such thing as hate speech. The cake is a lie, so is hate speech. Right now in Europe, in the UK, hate speech is a thing that exists. It is speech that other people find hateful, and there are dire consequences for people who engage in it. Freedom of speech in Europe is at the mercy of the state. It is whatever the state considers to be unharmful. We cannot allow that concept to take hold here in the United States. We simply cannot allow it, which is why I am very glad that the protest, the Unite the Right 2 rally, was allowed to move forward today. I'm glad that those white nationalists were allowed to move forward with their plans to march on Washington, D.C. Because it didn't accomplish very bloody much, did it? Couple dozen people. That's it. I mean, we go to the Twitter. Go to the latest, right here. Attendance might be low, but we can learn a lot from the rally, according to Vox. We can go to the latest. Let's see if they have a count up. Oh God, I hope they have a count. Okay, this is not going to get us very much. Oh, the Teen Choice pre-show is on. Nobody cares. The numbers spoke for themselves today at the Unite the Right 2 rally. As I said, they were expecting about 400 people. They wound up with 200 or so. They said 100 to 400 people, and it was far less than that, according to the Unite the Right leadership. And a bunch of opposition protesters came out. Don't look at this as a defeat for people who are nationalist. It's not. Today is a vindication for conservatives everywhere. Because conservatives are not ethno-nationalists, by and large. I'll say that again. Conservatives are not ethno-nationalists, by and large. People who have a true love of our nation and for our Constitution and for the values of the United States. Don't chalk up your patriotism to the color of your skin or your ancestors' nation of origin. It's just not a thing. Nationalism is not racism. white nationalists are racists. Black nationalists are also racists. Ethnostates are typically racist. Hate speech doesn't exist in the United States. There is only speech, and speech is free. The government cannot tell you how to speak. We have to fight back against not the demographic shift that Laura Ingraham was referring to. We have to fight back against the cultural shift of a generation that sees this as acceptable. That believes the government has a right to decide what speech is hateful and what is not. The Alex Jones deplatforming is not a violation of free speech because Facebook, YouTube, Google, Spotify, and every other platform has the right to regulate what content appears on their product, upon their service. It's very unsettling, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think he probably has an antitrust case, because they all deplatformed him at once. That's kind of locking somebody out of the market. So from a trade perspective, I think he has a case there. But it is not a violation of the First Amendment, because the First Amendment disallows the government from abridging your speech. Same thing with the NFL. The NFL has the right to regulate what its contractors, the players, do on their platform. How they conduct themselves. They have employment contracts, often with morality clauses, with all of the players. They have the absolute right to regulate the content on their platform. You cannot stand up and say, I support free speech, without supporting the right of these companies to control the speech that is on their platform, because in the end, it is also their speech. Their name is attached to it, their good name, or their bad name, depending on the company. And that is the cost of freedom of speech, is not only must your freedom of speech be protected, Alex Jones, but so must Facebook's, so must Google's, so must Spotify's. Their freedom of speech must also be protected. And if they choose not to have your content conflate with their brand, that is their right. The NFL players have a freedom of speech. So does the NFL. And the NFL owners have the right to exercise their freedom of speech and not have their brand conflated with the content and messaging that their players wish to put out. By the way, did everybody enjoy all the protests that we saw from the NFL players during the offseason? Oh, I don't think I saw any. It's not to say it didn't happen, but it sure didn't get any press. At the end of it all, being an American is loving this country and being a part of it legally, being a citizen. There are laws on citizenship. There are exceptions to every rule. There are skips in every record. Intent is key. And if you intend with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your bodily effort to become something, truly nothing can stop you. So for those people out there who truly intend to become Americans, I know that they will. All I ask is that they do it with their whole mind, body, and soul, and that they do it right. It's not a hard thing. Because anything worth doing and becoming a part of this great nation is certainly worth doing. Is worth doing the right way. And we must continue to battle every day against the forces that would seize those rights from us that make us Americans. The right to free speech, the right to free assembly, the right to freedom of religion. And we must celebrate those rights and celebrate our nation, and that is nationalism. Nationalism is love of your nation. Doesn't have anything to do with a race. So keep your ethno-nationalism and your white nationalism out of my nationalism. They're incompatible concepts, at least in the United States. Taking a look into Twitter and what's trending. Go for a refresh there. Unite the Right 2, still trending. Teen Choice trending. Man, that's really interesting. Tiger, what's going on with this? Tiger Woods? Yeah, geez. Tiger Woods. Still don't care. It's golf. Ugh. So, coming up this week, we have the primary here in Arizona coming up on the 28th. We're going to be paying a bit of attention to that. Also, next week, not quite sure if we're going to have a live show or not. I may have to pre-record that. Next week's my birthday. Yep, my birthday falls on the date of the show. So we're going to have a great show for you next week. Might have to pre-record that. If we do, it'll be uploaded on BitChute, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, all that fun stuff. By the way, if you have not had the chance yet, please do check out patreon.com/HoloNet. We're also on, as I said, BitChute. We have our new channel set up there. And holonet.com, holonet.lanterns.buzz, facebook.com/holonet, tweet @theholonet. And that's all we have for today's show. Ran out of time a little early. Was a little bit thrown off by those technical difficulties, but we'll get those run down, do better next week. In the meanwhile, good night. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. From Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks for listening.